February 27, 1943. Berlin. Morning. The cold bites through wool coats and leather gloves. Breath becomes fog in the frozen air. On Rosenstrasse, a narrow street in the Mitte-district, a woman stands outside a 5-story administrative building. Her name is Charlotte Israel. She is 34 years old. Her hands are shaking, not from the cold. Behind the building's stone facade, her husband is being held. His crime, being born Jewish. She is not alone. To her left, another woman. To her right, 2 more. Within the hour, dozens. By afternoon, hundreds. They do not carry signs. They do not chant slogans. They simply stand and wait. Above them, Gestapo officers watch from the windows. Machine guns are positioned on the rooftops. This is the heart of Nazi Germany. Public dissent does not exist here. It cannot exist here, and yet these women refuse to leave. They are ordinary housewives, secretaries, mothers. They have no weapons, no organization, no plan. Only one demand, whispered at first, then louder, then shouted into the iron face of the Third Reich: give us our husbands back. This is the story of the Rosenstrasse Protest, the moment 800,000 women across Germany held their breath, and a few thousand in Berlin refused to stay silent. By February 1943, Nazi Germany is no longer winning the war. 3 weeks earlier, the German Sixth Army surrendered at Stalingrad. Over 300,000 men, dead, captured, or missing. It is the greatest military defeat in German history. The myth of invincibility is shattered. In Berlin, flags are lowered. Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels declares total war at the Sportpalast on February 18. The message is clear. Every German must sacrifice. Every resource must be mobilized. Every weakness must be eliminated. That includes the Jews. By 1943, Berlin's Jewish population has been decimated. In 1933, there were 160,000 Jews living in the city. By early 1943, fewer than 27,000 remain. Most have fled. Thousands more have been deported to ghettos and camps in the east. The trains leave weekly, packed cattle cars heading toward places like Auschwitz, Treblinka, their Scienstadt. But a small group has been spared. Not out of mercy. Out of bureaucracy. They are Jews married to non-Jewish Germans, Mischehen, or mixed marriages. Under Nazi racial law, these marriages occupy a strange legal gray zone. The regime despises them. Hitler himself has called them racial pollution. But in the early years, the Nazis hesitate to dissolve them by force. Why? Because it would create public unrest. Because the non-Jewish spouses, German citizens, might object. Because the facade of legality must be maintained. So these Jewish men and women are classified as privileged Jews. They wear the yellow star, but they are not immediately deported. They work in forced labor. They live under constant surveillance. But they remain in Berlin with their families, tethered to a system that wants them gone but does not yet know how to erase them cleanly. By February 1943, that hesitation ends. The order comes from the top. Heinrich Himmler, Reichsführer SS, wants Berlin Judenrein, Jew-free. Goebbels, Gauleiter of Berlin, agrees. The timing is deliberate. The city is reeling from Stalingrad. Morale is fragile. A grand gesture is needed, something to prove that the regime is still in control, still uncompromising, still committed to the final solution. The operation is called Fabrication, the factory action. On February 27, 1943 at dawn, the Gestapo and SS move across Berlin. They enter factories, workshops, homes. They pull Jewish workers from assembly lines. They drag men from their breakfast tables. No warnings. No exceptions. Jewish men married to German women, who for years believed their marriages might protect them, are seized. Approximately 8,000 Jews are arrested in a single day. Most are taken directly to collection points for deportation to Auschwitz. But around 2,000, those in mixed marriages, are separated. They are not sent east. Not yet. Instead, they are marched to a building on Rosenstrasse, a former Jewish community welfare office converted into a detention center. They are packed into rooms without heat, without beds. Told to wait. The Gestapo does not explain why. Perhaps the bureaucracy is still deciding. Perhaps Goebbels wants a cleaner solution. Forced divorce decrees, legal annulments, something that looks orderly on paper. But outside, something unexpected begins. The wives learn where their husbands are being held. Word spreads, quietly at first, through whispers in bread lines and hurried phone calls. By midday on February 27, the first women arrive at Rosenstrasse. They stand outside the building. They ask to see their husbands. They are told to leave, they do not leave. The concept of privileged status in Nazi Germany is a study in cruelty disguised as bureaucracy. Under the Nuremberg laws of 1935, marriages between Jews and non-Jews are forbidden. But those already married are not forcibly divorced, not immediately. Instead, the regime creates categories. A Jewish man married to a German woman falls into one of two groups, privileged or non-privileged. The distinction hinges on children. If the children are raised Christian and registered as such, the Jewish parent is privileged. If the children are raised Jewish or if there are no children, the protection is weaker, sometimes non-existent. Even privileged Jews live under constant threat. They cannot own property. They cannot hold most jobs. They are banned from public transportation after certain hours. They must shop for food only during restricted times, often finding the shelves already empty. They wear the yellow star on their coats, marking them wherever they go. But they are not deported. Not with the others. Not yet. For years this system holds. The Nazi regime is obsessed with legality, the appearance of it, at least. Heinrich Himmler complains in private letters that mixed marriages are an embarrassment, a stain on racial purity. Goebbels echoes this sentiment. But both men are cautious. Forcing divorces would mean confronting German women, Aryan women, and telling them their marriages are invalid. It would mean explaining to the public why loyal German citizens are being punished. The regime worries about optics. About resistance. About a crack in the illusion of total control. But by 1943 those concerns are fading. The war is going badly. The Eastern Front is collapsing. The Allies are bombing German cities. The Nazi leadership becomes more desperate, and more radical. Himmler presses again for the complete removal of all Jews from German cities. Goebbels agrees. Berlin, the capital of the Reich, must be made Judenrein. No exceptions. No delays. The fabrication is designed to be swift and total. The Gestapo prepares lists. Addresses. Workplaces. On the morning of February 27, they strike across the city simultaneously. In factories producing uniforms and munitions, Jewish workers are hauled away mid-shift. In apartments, men are arrested in front of their wives and children. Some are given 5 minutes to pack. Others are taken in their work clothes, still holding tools. The majority, those without German spouses, are sent directly to assembly points at the Lewitzowstrasse synagogue and the Gross-Hamburger Strasse. From there they are loaded onto trains. Destination Auschwitz. They will not return. But the men in mixed marriages are treated differently. Not out of compassion. Out of uncertainty. The Gestapo does not yet have clear orders on what to do with them. Himmler's office debates options. Forced divorce? Sterilization? Deportation anyway? The answers are not ready. So these men, roughly 2,000 of them, are marched to Rosenstrasse 2-4, a 4-story building in central Berlin that once served as a Jewish community welfare office. It is now a detention center. Bare rooms. Narrow staircases. Armed guards. The men are crammed inside. They are not told what will happen next. They are not given food. They are ordered to remain silent. Outside, the guards form a perimeter. Machine guns are mounted at the corners. The building is sealed. But the Gestapo makes a critical miscalculation. They assume the wives will stay home. That the women will accept the arrests as inevitable, as thousands of other German citizens have accepted the disappearance of their Jewish neighbors. They assume silence, compliance, fear. They do not expect what happens next. By the afternoon of February 27, women begin arriving at Rosenstrasse. At first just a handful. They stand on the sidewalk across from the detention center. They do not speak. They do not move. They simply wait. By evening there are dozens. By the next morning hundreds. The Gestapo orders them to disperse. The women do not move. Officers approach, shouting threats. The women do not move. Some are shoved. Some are struck with batons. A few are briefly detained and released. But they return. And more come with them. Within 3 days the crowd swells to nearly 6,000 women. They pack the narrow street. They fill the sidewalks. They stand in the cold, day and night, refusing to leave. Some bring bread, trying to pass it to the guards for their husbands. Others simply stand in silence, their presence a statement louder than any slogan. The Nazis have never seen anything like this. Public protest is unthinkable in the Third Reich. Dissent is crushed immediately, arrests, torture, execution. The regime's power rests on fear, and fear rests on the certainty that resistance is suicide. But here, in the heart of Berlin, under the eyes of the Gestapo, thousands of German women are defying that fear. and the regime does not know what to do. Who are these women standing in the cold on Rosenstrasse? They are not radicals. They are not activists. Most have never participated in politics. They are typists, shopkeepers, nurses, housewives. Many are mothers. Some are elderly. Others are young, married only a few years. They come from different neighborhoods, different social classes, different lives. But they share one thing: their husbands are inside that building. Their names are not recorded in Nazi files. The Gestapo does not bother to document them. They are seen as hysterical wives, nuisances, temporary obstacles. But their presence is deliberate. They are there because they have made a calculation, one that defies the logic of Nazi Germany. These women know what happens to deported Jews. By 1943, rumors of mass killings in the East have circulated quietly through Berlin. The regime denies it. The newspapers say nothing. But whispers travel, in churches, in markets, in private homes. Families who receive letters from the East notice they stop coming. Jewish neighbors who are taken away never return. The women on Rosenstrasse understand that if their husbands are deported, they will die. So they stand. Not because they believe the regime will listen, but because silence means complicity. Because love in this moment becomes resistance. One woman, Elsa Halser, later recalls, "I didn't think about whether it was dangerous. I thought about my husband. I thought about my children. What would I tell them if I did nothing?" Another, Ursula Braun, remembers the cold. "We stood for hours. Our feet went numb. The guards told us to leave. We didn't leave. What else could we do?" These are not speeches. Not rallying cries. Just simple statements. But in a dictatorship built on silence, simplicity becomes defiance. Inside the building, the Jewish men wait. They do not know what is happening outside. The windows are covered. Guards do not speak to them. They are packed into rooms, 30-40 men per room. No beds. No heat. Some sit on the floor. Others stand, pressed against walls. The air smells of sweat and fear. Most of these men are in their 30s and 40s. They have lived under Nazi rule for a decade. They have watched their rights dissolve piece by piece, jobs lost, homes confiscated, friends vanished. They have worn the yellow star. They have endured insults, beatings, isolation. But they have survived. Their marriages, strange as it sounds, have been a shield. Now that shield is gone. They know the fabric action is a final sweep. They know the trains east are not heading to labor camps, despite what the Gestapo claims. They have heard the rumors. They know. One man, Julius Moses, a physician, writes in a smuggled note, "We are trapped. There is no reason to believe they will release us. I do not expect to see my family again." Another, Kurt Lewin, a factory supervisor, paces the room. He counts the guards. He watches the doors. He does not speak. There is nothing to say. But outside something is building. Some of the men hear it, faint at first, then louder. Voices. Women's voices. Shouting. At first they think it is a disturbance, a riot being crushed. But the voices do not stop. They continue day after day. The men realize their wives are out there. For the Gestapo, the protest at Rosenstrasse is an administrative nightmare. Nazi Germany operates on a logic of total control. Resistance is impossible because the consequences are absolute. Speak against the regime and you disappear. Protect a Jew and you are arrested. Publicly defy the state and you are executed. But these women are not communists. They are not Jews. They are German citizens. Aryan wives. Mothers. Many come from families that support the regime. Some have sons fighting on the Eastern Front. They are not enemies of the state, or at least they have not been treated as such. The Gestapo has a choice: disperse the protest by force or ignore it. Force would be simple. Machine guns are already positioned. Orders could be given. The crowd could be cleared in minutes. But there is a problem. This is Berlin, the capital. Thousands of people pass Rosenstrasse daily. Witnesses, civilians, party members. News would spread. Not through newspapers, the press is controlled, but through whispers, through fear, through the simple fact that blood on a Berlin street cannot be hidden. And Goebbels is watching. Joseph Goebbels is the Gauleiter of Berlin and the Reich Minister of Propaganda. He is also one of the most image-obsessed men in Nazi Germany. By 1943, his job has become nearly impossible. The war is turning. Stalingrad is lost. The Allies are advancing in North Africa. British and American bombers are hitting German cities weekly. Morale is cracking. Goebbels knows this. He monitors public opinion reports obsessively. He reads transcripts of conversations overheard by Gestapo informants. He knows what Berliners are saying in private: the war is not going well. His response is the Total War speech at the Sportpalast on February 18, 1943. He asks the crowd, "Do you want total war?" They roar back, "Yes." The event is staged, choreographed, filmed. It is propaganda perfection. Goebbels needs the German people to believe that sacrifice will lead to victory, that unity will overcome all obstacles, that the Reich is still strong. And then, 9 days later, the fabrication begins. The plan is to make Berlin Juden reign, quietly, efficiently, without disruption. The remaining Jews will be removed. The city will be clean. It will be a victory Goebbels can report to Hitler, proof that Berlin is loyal, committed, uncompromising. But the protest at Rosenstrasse threatens that narrative. Goebbels does not fear the women. He fears what they represent. Public dissent. Open defiance. A crack in the illusion of total control. If the regime cannot remove 2,000 Jews from a single building because their wives are standing outside, what does that say about German power? What does it say about the Führer's authority? Worse, what if others see this and think resistance is possible? Goebbels' diaries from early March 1943 are telling. He writes on March 2, "We are getting rid of the Jews in Berlin. There has been some unpleasantness, but it is being handled." He does not describe the protest in detail. He does not acknowledge its scale. This is typical. Goebbels erases problems from the record. If something does not fit the narrative, it does not exist. But privately he is calculating. Shooting German women in the streets of Berlin would be a disaster. It would confirm the rumors circulating in foreign press, that the Nazi regime is murderous, unstable, turning on its own people. It would undermine the image of Germany as a civilized, orderly state. It would hand the Allies a propaganda victory. So Goebbels waits. He consults with Himmler. He weighs options. He stalls. And the women keep standing. The Gestapo officers on Rosenstrasse are in an impossible position. They have orders to hold the Jewish detainees. They do not have orders on how to handle the wives. Standard protocol would be to arrest them, charge them with obstruction, perhaps even with aiding Jews. But arresting 6,000 women is not simple. It requires transport, detention facilities, paperwork. And more importantly, it requires a legal justification that will not provoke public backlash. The Gestapo tries other methods. On February 28, officers move through the crowd with loudspeakers, ordering the women to leave. They threaten arrest. They threaten worse. Some women are shoved. A few are briefly detained, held for an hour, then released. The goal is intimidation. Fear. It does not work. The women return. More come. The crowd grows. By March 1, the street is so packed that pedestrians have to walk around the protest. Trams slow down. Passengers stare. Witnesses multiply. The Gestapo shifts tactics. They try to isolate the women. Guards approach individuals, asking for names, addresses, identification. Some women give false names. Others refuse to answer. The guards write nothing down. They have no real plan. They are waiting for orders from above. Inside the building, the detainees hear the shouting. They begin to understand. Their wives are fighting for them. The realization is both terrifying and surreal. In Nazi Germany, such a thing should not be possible. And yet, it is happening. One detainee, Hans-Oskar Lowenstein, later recalls, "We could hear them. We didn't know how many, but we could hear them. It gave us something we hadn't felt in years. Hope." The Gestapo officers, meanwhile, grow increasingly uneasy. Some are veteran enforcers, hardened by years of violence. But others are clerks, administrators, men used to processing paperwork, not confronting crowds of desperate women. They look to their superiors. The superiors look to Berlin headquarters. Headquarters looks to Goebbels. And Goebbels is still calculating. Beyond Berlin, the world is watching Nazi Germany, though imperfectly. By 1943, reports of mass deportations and killings have reached the Allies. The BBC broadcasts accounts from Polish resistance fighters. Jewish organizations in Britain and the United States publish testimonies from escapees. The Nazi regime denies everything, calling the reports Jewish lies and enemy propaganda. But the regime is sensitive to international perception. Germany still trades with neutral countries like Sweden and Switzerland. Diplomatic relations with Spain, Turkey, and other nations remain active. The Nazis want to be seen as a legitimate government, not a gang of murderers. A massacre of German women in the streets of Berlin would be impossible to deny. It would be witnessed by thousands. Photographs might leak. Diplomats might ask questions. The international press would seize on it. Internally, the optics are just as dangerous. The Nazi regime rules through fear, but also through a kind of social contract with the German people. Support the war effort, stay loyal to the Führer, and you will be safe. You will not be targeted. Your family will not be harmed. The brutality is directed at enemies, Jews, communists, resistance fighters, undesirables. Not at ordinary Germans. The women at Rosenstrasse are ordinary Germans. They are not Jews. They are not resistance fighters. They are wives and mothers. Many have brothers, fathers, and sons fighting in the Wehrmacht. They are, by the regime's own logic, loyal citizens. If the Gestapo shoots them, that contract breaks. The message becomes, no one is safe. Not even Aryan women. Not even in the capital. Not even if you are just standing on a street. The regime cannot afford that message. Not in 1943. Not with the war collapsing in the East. Not with morale already fragile. So the standoff continues. The women stand. The Gestapo watches. And in the offices of the Reich Security Main Office, a decision is slowly taking shape. March 1, 1943. The protest enters its third day. The women on Rosenstrasse have not left. Some sleep in shifts, leaning against walls, huddled in doorways. Others stand through the night, shivering in the cold. Food is scarce. There are no restrooms. The conditions are brutal. But no one leaves. The crowd has swelled. Estimates vary, but by the end of the first week, between 6,000 and 10,000 women have gathered at some point on Rosenstrasse. Not all are there at once. The street cannot hold that many, but they rotate in shifts. Some come in the morning, stand for hours, then leave for work or to care for children. Others take their place. The Gestapo tries again to break them. On March 2nd, officers arrive with dogs. German shepherds trained for intimidation. The animals bark and lunge. The women flinch but do not retreat. One woman, Gertrude Schwartz, steps forward and shouts, "You can kill us, but you will not take our husbands." The officers do not respond. They pull the dogs back. The crowd swells again. On March 3rd, loudspeakers are brought in. A voice booms across the street, "You are violating public order. You are obstructing Reich security operations. Leave immediately or face arrest." No one moves. The voice repeats the warning. Still no one moves. The loudspeakers fall silent. Inside the detention center, the men are growing weaker. They have been given minimal food, watery soup, stale bread. Some are sick. Others are injured from the rough arrest. The rooms are overcrowded. The air is stale. But the shouting outside continues. The men cling to it. It is proof that they have not been forgotten. One detainee, Werner Goldberg, whispers to the man next to him, "They're still out there. Our wives. They're still out there." The man nods. Neither speaks again. There is nothing more to say. By March 4th, the protest has become a spectacle. Berliners walking past Rosenstrasse slow down to watch. Some join briefly. Others hurry by, heads down, unwilling to be associated. But word spreads. In bakeries and tram stations, people whisper, "Have you heard? The wives are still there. The Gestapo hasn't stopped them." This is dangerous information. Not because it is false. Because it is true. For years, the Nazi regime has cultivated an image of omnipotence. The state is all-powerful. Resistance is futile. The Gestapo sees everything, controls everything, crushes everything. But here on Rosenstrasse, that image is cracking. Thousands of people are witnessing it. The regime is being defied. And nothing is happening to the defiers. The psychological impact is immeasurable. On March 5th, orders finally come from above. Goebbels and Himmler have made a decision. The Jewish men in mixed marriages will not be deported. Not now. The paperwork will be revised. The legal status of privileged Jews will be reaffirmed, temporarily. The men will be released. But the decision is not announced publicly. There is no statement. No acknowledgement of the protest. The release is framed as an administrative correction, a bureaucratic clarification. The narrative must be controlled. The regime cannot admit that it backed down. The Gestapo officers at Rosenstrasse are informed quietly. They are told to begin releasing the detainees in small groups, spread over several days. Make it look routine. Make it look planned. Do not let it seem like a concession. On the morning of March 6th, the first men are released. The door opens at 9 a.m. A Gestapo officer steps out onto Rosenstrasse and calls a name. Then another. Then 3 more. 5 men are told to come forward. They are processed quickly, signatures, identity checks, warnings not to discuss what happened inside. Then they are released. The women see them first. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Then shouts. Then tears. The men step into the street, blinking in the daylight. They are thin, pale, disoriented. Their wives rush forward. The guards do not stop them. Embraces, sobbing. Hands clutching coats, faces, arms, confirming that this is real. More names are called. More men released. The process continues through the day. 10 men. 20. 50. By evening, over 100 have been freed. The women do not celebrate. Not yet. They know this could stop. They know the Gestapo could change its mind. So they remain. Those whose husbands have been released leave quietly, slipping away with their families. But others stay, waiting for their own names to be called. March 7th. More releases. The crowd on Rosenstrasse thins but does not disappear. The Gestapo continues processing detainees in small batches. No explanations are given. No apologies. The men are simply told, "You are free to go." Inside, the remaining detainees watch as their numbers dwindle. Some fear it is a trick. That they will be separated again. That the trains will come anyway. But the releases continue. By March 8th, over 1,500 men have been freed. The detention center is nearly empty. The women still waiting outside are fewer now, perhaps 100. They stand silently watching the door. On March 9th, the last men are released. One of them, Leopold Moses, steps out into the cold. His wife, Margarethi, is waiting. She has been there every day for 2 weeks. She has not slept more than a few hours at a time. Her face is gaunt, her hands raw from the cold. When she sees him, she does not speak. She simply takes his arm. They walk away together. By the afternoon of March 9th, Rosenstrasse is empty. The protest has ended. Not with a declaration. Not with a victory speech. It simply dissolves. The women leave quietly, taking their husbands home. The Gestapo removes the guards. The building is locked. Within days it returns to administrative use. No photographs are taken. No official records are filed. The Nazi regime treats the entire event as if it never happened. In Goebbels' diary, there is no mention of the protest's success. In Gestapo reports, the releases are described as administrative adjustments. The narrative is sealed. But the truth cannot be erased. Over 1,700 Jewish men in mixed marriages are released from Rosenstrasse. They return to their homes, to their families, to their lives, precarious as they are. Most will survive the war. Some will be rearrested later, but the majority will live to see liberation in 1945. The women who stood on Rosenstrasse saved their husbands' lives. Not through violence. Not through sabotage. But through presence. Through defiance. Through the simple, stubborn act of refusing to leave. The Nazi regime, for the first and only time during the Holocaust, backs down in the face of public protest. It is a singular moment. An anomaly. A crack in the machinery of totalitarian control. And it happens because a few thousand ordinary women decided that silence was no longer an option. The immediate consequences of the Rosenstrasse protest are both profound and obscured. Of the approximately 1,700 to 2,000 Jewish men released from detention, the vast majority survived the war. This is extraordinary. By comparison, of the roughly 8,000 Jews arrested during the fabrication on February 27, 1943, nearly 7,000 are deported to Auschwitz within days. Almost none return. The survival rate for those deported is less than 1%. But the men released from Rosenstrasse go home. They return to their families. They resume their forced labor assignments. Their legal status as privileged Jews is quietly reaffirmed. The regime does not explain why. There are no formal policy changes. No memos. No announcements. The entire episode is treated as an administrative anomaly, a bureaucratic correction. In Nazi Germany, this silence is intentional. The regime cannot admit that it yielded to public pressure. To do so would invite more protests. It would suggest weakness. It would undermine the foundation of totalitarian rule, the illusion that resistance is impossible. So the releases are buried in paperwork. The women are erased from official records. The protest itself is never mentioned in Nazi documents, newspapers, or propaganda. But people remember. The women who stood on Rosenstrasse return to their lives. They do not speak publicly about what they did. This is not modesty. It is survival. Drawing attention to the protest would be dangerous. The Gestapo might decide to finish what it started. The husbands might be rearrested. The families might be targeted. So they stay silent. They tell their children only fragments. They do not describe themselves as heroes or resistors. When asked later, many say simply, "I wanted my husband back. What else could I do?" This silence extends into the post-war period. For decades, the Rosenstrasse Protest is largely forgotten. Historians documenting the Holocaust focus on the camps, the ghettos, the death marches. Resistance is studied through the lens of armed uprisings. The Warsaw Ghetto, the partisans, the assassination plots against Hitler. The story of unarmed women standing in a Berlin street does not fit neatly into those narratives. But the evidence is there waiting. Joseph Goebbels' diaries, captured after the war, contain oblique references. On March 6, 1943, he writes, "The evacuation of Jews has led to a number of unpleasant scenes. Some of the women have made difficulties. But the matter is now being resolved." He does not elaborate. He does not name Rosenstrasse. But the timing is unmistakable. Other sources emerge slowly. Personal letters. Survivor testimonies. Interviews conducted in the 1980s and 1990s. Gradually, historians piece together what happened. One of the key voices is Nathan Stoltzfus, an American historian who publishes Resistance of the Heart in 1996. His research brings the Rosenstrasse protest to wider attention. He argues that it represents a unique case in Holocaust history, a successful act of civil resistance against deportation. His work is both celebrated and contested. Some historians question the scale of the protest. Others debate whether the regime's decision to release the men was truly influenced by the women, or whether it was already planned for other reasons. But the testimonies are clear. The women were there. The men were released. The connection is undeniable.